In the book of Exodus chapter 15, I'll begin reading with verse 22. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Thank you. That'll be all the reading that I do today. I will come back to this story in just a little bit. But I've been doing a study, and I've never preached on this before. But I want to preach on the subject of Moses and the water. If you will see the life of Moses, you will find from his birth even until his death, we find that his life experiences are always involved with the substance of water. Within these recorded verses, we can see the movings and the motives of the workings of God in Moses' life through this thing called water. As Moses introduces us to the stories behind the water being prevalent in the history of his personal journeys with God, there's much that we can glean from in these historical moments that we find in the Scripture. When you read the Word of God, you will find that there were 4 basic typologies of this substance called water. The first typology of water is what we call humanity. It was there that Jesus and Peter went out on the boat, and with all humanity, God asked him to throw the net in, and he caught a great trout of fish. And there, God was showing us that we are to be fishers of men, which was what he stated when they got back to the shore. And the draught of fish that they had brought in was symbolizing putting out the gospel net and bringing people to Christ. Water could be typified as humanity. Water could also be typified as the Word of God. For it was Jesus that said, we are clean through His Word. Water can also be typified as a type of salvation. You remember in John chapter number 4 when Jesus met the woman at the well. Jesus looked at her and said, if you drink this water, you will thirst again. But if you will drink of the water that I'm offering you, you will never thirst, but it will be a well of water springing up in the everlasting life. Water can be typified as salvation. But water can also be typified as a moving of the Spirit of God. You remember over, I think it's in John chapter number 8, there at the pool of Bethesda where the man laid for 38 years. And he said to Jesus that every once in a while an angel would come down and stir and trouble the waters. And when the water was troubled, he that got in or her that got in first was immediately healed of whatsoever plague they had. But there had to be a troubling of the water. And it's a type of how the Spirit of God must first trouble a sinner in his soul before he will ever receive a divine healing from God. But I want to show you in this life of this man called Moses how God significantly brought in water to prove to us some things that will help us in our daily walk with God. Let me illustrate. The first time you find Moses dealing with water is in Exodus chapter 2. Moses is born, they're in the land of Egypt, and all the male children were to be killed. When Moses' mother looked at him, the Bible said she saw that he was a goodly child. And the Bible said she hid him for 3 months. But after 3 months, Brother Randy, she realized she could not hide him anymore. And somehow God impressed her to build an ark or a boat or a container. And here a mother took a 3-month-old baby, put it in a container, and let it go in the Nile River. Now, if a mother would do that in our day, she would be turned into the DSS for child abuse. she would be in a mental ward, and they'd say she's out of her mind. Here's a 3-month-old baby. She didn't even pack him with Pampers. She didn't even put an extra bottle in there. As far as we know, she just took Moses, wrapped him in a cloth, put him in that ark, sealed it up, and put him in the Nile River. Do you know what Moses' chances were to live in the Nile River? And you remember all the bacteria that comes out of the Nile River? He could have very easily got sick and died. Do you know all the wild beasts that inhabited both sides of the Nile River? Everything from foxes and wolves were all there. And then above all of that, you have the Nile River that are constantly being invaded by full-grown alligators. Moses' chances of living through the experience of the Nile River is absolutely none. I call this the water of providence. God knew where he was. God knew what his mama was going to do. God knew where she was going to put him in the Nile River. God wasn't looking out for Moses long before Moses was ever trying to look out for God. I call this the water of providence. And she dropped him by faith in that water and walked away. Did you know I found out from the top of Egypt to the bottom of Ethiopia? Do you know how long the Nile River is? It's 4,132 miles long. 4,132 miles. And a mama takes a 3-month-old baby, drops him in the Nile River. There's bacteria, there's wild beasts, there are alligators. And out of 4,132 miles, God lets Pharaoh's daughter step in. That may not be doing anything for you, but it's sure helping me. I call this the water of providence. Out of 4,132 miles, Pharaoh's daughter steps in. Moses starts crying. You can disagree. I believe the Holy Ghost pinched him. And he started crying. And she took him in. Wait a minute, Brother Randy, wait a minute. This is not only an Israelite, he's a male. All male children were killed by the midwives at birth. He wasn't even supposed to live. Here's Pharaoh's daughter. Here's the president of Egypt's daughter. Finds a Jew, and he's a male, and he's in the middle of the Nile River. And by all implications, she should have turned him over to authorities, and they should have killed him. Moses should have died that day. But for some reason, oh, I'm never going to get through this. I'm never going to get through this. I'm never going to get through this. But for some reason, when she looked on that Jewish boy, she gave him to his servants and said, don't you hurt him. You keep him clean. You keep him fed. You nourish him till I figure out what I'm going to do with him. Moses has no idea that God's taking care of him. Moses has no idea that in the providence of God, his hand is on him. Moses has no idea that God's looking out for him when he's not even thinking about God. Then Pharaoh's daughter goes home and says, I don't breastfeed. I don't have any children. I don't know how I'm going to take care of this baby. And there's 2.5 million Jews in Egypt that night. 2.5 million! Whoop! And Pharaoh's daughter said, find a woman of Israel that can give nurse to this baby. And out of 2.5 million Jews on a 4,132 mile Nile River, they picked Moses' mother. They pick his mother. Oh, God's in the house today. And they picked his mother. And Pharaoh's daughter brought him Moses and said, have you ever seen a boy that cute? His mama said, no, I don't believe I ever have. And Pharaoh's daughter said, look, you're not only going to take care of him, you're not only going to raise him, Pharaoh's paying for it. Obama's paying for every bit of this. He's paid for everybody else's, bless God. Let him pay for Moses. And Moses' mother took him home and raised him on a government salary and never hit a lick at a snake and raised the greatest deliverer that the Bible has ever known outside of Jesus. You know what I'm trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you, long before you were thinking about God, God was thinking about you. Oh, God had his hand on your life when you was drifting in another direction. It seemed impossible that you would ever change what you are. Some of you used to lie in your own vomit in a liquor bottle. How many of your friends have been killed on the side of the road, died in their own vomit? How many of your buddies you went to school with have overdosed, committed suicide? How many girls have you went to school with have been found dead in the back of a black alley somewhere? All of that crowd's dead and in hell. But for some reason, you're sitting here on a Sunday morning with Jesus in your heart and a Bible in your lap and the Holy Ghost. There's only one way. There's only... Just stand up, give him a hand clap of praise. God in his providence, God in his providence was watching out for you. You should have been in hell a long time ago. And the only reason why you're not, God's mercy and providence. And who would have dreamed that God would have a plan for you such as he has? I want to take you to East 22nd and Woodland Avenue. The back of the court opens up and in steps a 16, 15-year-old boy with a yellow orange suit on, plastic shoes, and is handcuffed. Walks down the aisle of a courtroom and his daddy's with him. The rest of his family wouldn't even come. He walks down in front of a judge he had been in front of a lot of times before. And the judge had promised to put him under the jail if he ever came back again. The little snotty-nosed boy takes a seat over to the left, and his dad sits down beside him. All of a sudden, somebody unexpectedly walks in the back of the courtroom. Your Honor, before we start this trial, could I say something to that man sitting by that boy right there, Mr. Kidd? Could I say something to him? Sure, go ahead. Mr. Kidd, that little hippie boy sitting next to you today is going to be a preacher. And I'm going to preach him all over the world. And he's going to preach thousands and thousands of times to hundreds of thousands and millions of people. And over 100,000 people are going to walk the aisles of churches and take him by the hand and receive Jesus Christ as their Savior. And he's going to be on television and Roku and internet and Comcast and DirecTV, and he's going to be on Instant Church app, and he's going to be on radio, and he's going to be reaching 75 million people from his pulpit. My daddy would have turned around and said, thank you for that encouraging word, but my son isn't headed for a pulpit, sir. My son is headed for a prison. But I'm glad when daddy could only see handcuffs and an orange shirt, I'm glad there was a God that looked far beyond what I was and saw what I could be. Aren't you glad God saw what you could be when everybody else just saw what you were? We are what we are because of the providence of God. Moses and the water of providence. Second of all, I want to talk about Moses and the water of promise. It's here in Exodus chapter number 13 that Moses is now getting ready to cross the Red Sea. And the Bible said that God told him to take the rod and smite the waters. If you will study the Red Sea where they crossed over out of Egypt, it was 12 miles from one bank to the other. 12 miles. It's a long way to look at water. Moses had a rod in his hand, 2.5 million Jews behind him, and Pharaoh and his army coming after him. And God said, Moses, you're the ones that put the blood over the door. You're the ones that believed when I said offer the lamb and apply the blood. And because you've applied the blood, I've made a promise to you. I'm going to bring you out of bondage. I promised you that if you'd get the blood applied, I'd break every chain and bring you out of bondage. And it doesn't look like you're going to get out. And it looks like the world's going to overtake you. And it looks like your past addictions are fast on your heels. And it looks like your bad habits will never go away. But I'll tell you what I want you to do. You take that rod and smoke that water. But God, it's 12 miles across there. Smoke the waters. But it's 70 feet deep in the middle. Smoke the waters. And God promised, if you'll receive the blood, if you'll accept the Lamb, I'll make you a promise. I'll break every addiction. I'll bring you out of the land of bondage. And I'll set you free by the grace of Almighty God. Now watch this. Brother Adams, I never saw this before. Out of all the plagues that God brought upon Egypt, one of them, I think the most nastiest, would be the plague of the locusts. Not only because of the noise they make and the fact that they eat all the greenery, but when you step on them, they crunch. And the Bible said that Egypt was covered in locusts. Think about it. You couldn't take a step without crunching locusts. Billions and billions and billions of them. And everywhere you went, there were locusts. That was part of the curse, right? That's part of the curse. But the Bible said in Exodus chapter 10, when God cleared out all the locusts, you know what the Bible said he did? I've never seen this before. The Bible said he threw them into the Red Sea. Here's Moses on the brink of the Red Sea. All he could see is those billions of locusts across that Red Sea. All he could see was a curse. All he could see was rebellion. All he could see was being disheartened. All he could see was being alienated from God. Every one of them locusts looked at him and said, "You're cursed. Don't you remember? You're cursed. We mean you're cursed." And God said, "Don't you pay your past any attention. Don't you listen to what you used to be. You smoke that water and I promise you, not one of them will touch you. Not one of them will follow you. Not one of them will bite you." When God parted that water, the sludge in the bottom of the Red Sea should have been at least 12 feet deep. They should have completely sunk in the muck and the mire in the bottom of the Red Sea. But the Bible said they went across on dry ground. God let a wind come, Brother Glenn. It not only parted the waters, the Bible said it was a wall on their left side and a wall on their right. But it was dry ground. You know how many times the Bible said a locust jumped on an Israelite woman? None. Because trust me, when a locust jumps on a woman, everybody's going to know about it. Anything jumps on a woman, everybody's going to know about it. They'll scream to the high heavens, even if it's plastic. I know what I'm talking about. Not one woman screamed. Not one kid said, "I got a pet locust." Not one locust was hanging on their clothes when they got to the other side. You know what God is saying? I don't care how screwed up you were. I don't care how cursed you were. I don't care how locked up, bondage, and addicted you were. I make you a promise. I'm going to set you free. He promises to bring redemption and deliverance to all of those that have applied the blood. That's called the water of promise. The third time Moses deals with water is what I call the water of provision. And I must hurry. It is in Exodus chapter 17 that Moses is leading the children of Israel. They've went for 3 days, several days without water. And the Bible said they'd come to a dry spot and they didn't know what to do. And they didn't know how they were going to get any water. And the Bible said they were in a place called Horeb, which means a desolate land. They had just come out of the wilderness of sin. See, sometimes people believe if you get out of sin, you automatically get flooded with blessings. Here they just came out of the wilderness of sin and they find themselves in a desolate desert. Sometimes getting out of sin is a tough journey. It's a tough journey getting out of sin sometimes. It's tough to lay that liquor bottle down when you've lived in it for so long. It's tough to tell pot and pills and meth and crack, "I'm not going that route anymore." It's tough to lay that porn down. It's tough to lay that cussing down. It's tough to lay that stealing down. And you think because you get saved and you come out of the wilderness of sin that you're going to be overflowed all the time. God put them through a dry place to see how sincere they were about getting out of sin. And all of a sudden after 3 days they go to Moses and say, "Look, man, what are we supposed to do? We're out of bottled water. There's not a stream. There's nowhere What are we supposed to do? And Moses went before the Lord, and he cried before the Lord, and he said, Moses, what are we going to do? Now watch this. I've never seen this before, Brother Mark, in my life. God said, Moses, they need water. You're in Horeb, which means a desert. He said, you see that rock there? Take that rod and smoke that rock. Now think about this. I'd never thought about this before. The first time Moses used the rod, it was because there was too much water. The Red Sea. Now he's smoting it because there's not enough water. You see, God can take something in your life and use it any way he wants to use it. You don't program God and put him in a box and tell him how he has to use something in your life. So he smokes that rock, and gushing out of the belly of that rock, a type of Christ, was enough water to not only satisfy 2.5 million Jews, but it also flooded enough so that all the animals could be refreshed. And God prepared for them a table in the wilderness. I call this the water of provision. Have you got a need in your life and it looks like there's no way it's going to get taken care of? Do you need God to do something for you? You've come out of sin. You're trying to walk. They're in the will of God, by the way. They're in God's will. And they're still going through a dry place. And God is wanting to see how serious they are about getting out of sin. Have you got something since you've walked away from sin that you need God to do for you? But no matter what direction you look at it, it looks dark. It looks dry. It looks divided. It looks like nothing can happen. As long as there's a rock on earth and there's a God in heaven, he's able to take care of you and provide for you. I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know what you need. I don't know what you have to have. But there's a God in heaven that knows what you need before you ever asked him. If he can take care of the birds of the air and the fowls on the ground, he can take care of his own. He's a God of promise. This is the one I want to get to. I got to hurry up and close. I want to talk about the water of problems. This is where I read my text in Exodus chapter 15. Again, now watch this. I got to hurry. They've went days without water. All of a sudden, they top one of the crusty hills of the desert, and they looked, and there is a huge body of water. 2.5 million Jews went taking off down that dusty hillside wide open. Their tongues were cleft to the tops of the roofs of their mouth. Their lips were parched and chapped and cracked and bleeding. And they said, man, isn't God good? God has again supplied the water that we need. And they fell down and dropped their heads in the water. And the Bible said they got up and started choking and gagging. And the people said, what's wrong? They said, these waters are bitter. We can't drink it. Have you ever been somewhere in your life where it wasn't really going good? And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you see a little glimmer of light, only to find out it's bitter when you get there? One fellow said, I see a light at the end of the tunnel. And another guy yelled back, it's a train. There may be times when you think you're about to get out of something, but in reality, you just entering into it. And they're thirsty and there's water everywhere and they can't drink it. I call this the water of problems. There's one thing all of us have in common in this auditorium today. We're different sizes. We're different races. We have different likes of food, different likes of cars. Our hair's different colors. All of us have physiques that are different. But all of us have one thing in general and in common. We've all got problems. We've got a problem. And it seems like the more I deal with the problem that I've got, the more bitter it becomes in my life. I believe God's going to speak to somebody today about where I'm at. You've got a problem that's out of hand. It's turned you so bitter you don't think you could take another day of it. You think, why in the world did you bring me out here? And here's what's happened. When you start having problems and it gets worse and you get bitter, watch what they started doing. They started murmuring against Moses. Moses brought them across the Red Sea, parted the waters. Moses brought them through the desert, smote a rock, got them water. He's been nothing but good to them. But when you get bitter and you let circumstances of life turn you bitter, the first thing you will start doing is murmuring against those that have helped you the most. We've had people come here shipwrecked, on the verge of divorce, kids strung out on drugs, no money, no rent, no water, no car. We've helped them. We've paid their bills. We've got them on their feet. And now the same crowd tells everybody this is the sorriest church in Kingsport, Tennessee. You better watch your bitterness. It'll make you talk about those that help you and love you the most. Moses said, now look, Lord, here's a bitter experience and I can't handle it. So you tell me what to do and it's a done deal. God said, here's all you got to do. Don't touch the water. But I got my rod. You know you've used it before. You parted the Red Sea and you made water come out of a rock. God said, no. There's a time you use a rod, but it's not this time. These people have problems. They're hurting. They're discouraged. The only thing that's going to turn this around is to use a tree. And the Bible said Moses cut a tree. There was only one. And he applied it. He just put it in the bitter experience. And the Bible said the moment that that tree hit that bitter water, here's what your Bible said, and the waters were made sweet. God didn't take the water away. God didn't direct them to another branch of water. He simply said, be content where you're at. I'm God right where you're at. I'm setting you up for something special. I'm getting ready to do something big for you. Don't get bitter. Don't get discouraged. Don't get burnt out. I got something big around the corner. All you got to do is apply the cross. Take the tree that Jesus died on. Put it in your bitter experience. And God can turn it around for His honor and His glory. The last one, I call it the water of passing on. In Deuteronomy 34, Moses is dying now. God takes him up on top of Mount Nebo. And there it's Pisgah, which means the top of the mountain, outside of Moab. And when Moses got to the top of that mountain, he was at the very peak. He was as close to God as humans could be. And God said, I want you to look over into Canaan land. But Brother Manus, he couldn't look in Canaan land without looking across the Jordan. Between him and Jericho was water, the Jordan River. And God said, Moses, you've been a good man. You've been a godly man. And I think so much of you that I'm not going to let you die. I'm going to let you go to sleep. And you've been such a good man, I'm not even going to let them bury you. I'm going to bury you. And you've been such a good man that I'm not going to let anybody preach your funeral. I'm going to preach your funeral. And Moses never came off the mountain. He laid down on top of Mount Pisgah as close to God as he could be. Closed his eyes, and when he opened up, he was in the arms of his great God that he had served for so long. I want to say to you in closing, church, the same God that protected you before you were saved, the same God that redeemed you and gave you freedom from bondage, the same God that has supplied your needs, the same God that has solved your problems is the same God that'll be there when you take your dying breath. He'll never leave His own.